This is the Stick Figure Purpose podcast with Kevin Henson. And welcome. It's the first episode of the Stick Figure Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Henson, and I'm excited to get things started for 2025 with a great friend of mine, Chance Craven. Chance, thanks for being here. How about give everybody a little intro to what you got going on, who you are?
Absolutely. My name is Chance Craven. Live and reside in the upstate of South Carolina. Man of faith, believe in Jesus. Happily married to my bride, Katie, for the last 12 years. We have 2 boys. And I am the founder of Honor Supply Company, where our mission is to honor firefighters by sharing what they do.
Awesome. So if you don't know anything about Honor Supply Co., you came to the right place. I'm sure there's very few people out there that haven't heard about it, but we're going to talk a lot about it today.
Yeah. Before we talk about me, though, I want to talk about Stick Figure Podcast, Stick Figure Purpose.
Oh, man, here we go.
It was 18 days ago that I made a social media post. You reached out and said, hey, man, this is the catalyst. I'm jumping into this. So let's talk kind of about how long you've had this idea, where it originated from, and then we can talk about me. But you first.
All right. Put me on the spot, man. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, it's crazy, honestly. So I've thought about doing something similar to this for a long time. I'm starting my 23rd year in the fire service in January. Crazy. And so I absolutely love what I do. Started out as a volunteer firefighter for a little less than a year. Said, hey, man, I want to make a career out of this. I can feed my family and serve others. So started doing it as a career. And after 23 years, I said, there's other stuff out there that I can do. There's other ways I can honor people. There's other ways I can talk about what I've learned and tell my story. And so jokingly, I started talking about this with my wife and kids, I don't know, maybe a year ago. And so went on Amazon and I said, hey, I'm going to order a podcast kit. Like, what is a podcast kit? You know? And so I did. And this thing shows up, and a little segue into a history about me. Way back when I played in a band, so know a little bit about audio stuff, and it shows up and I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, what the heck? And so really the only thing out of that kit that I would say is even remotely still in this studio right now is the microphone stand. And
nice.
That's it. Yeah, it was cheap. We'll start there. But anyways, I got this thing. I set it up, played around with some audio and video apps on my Mac, and it went nowhere, right? And so they're giving me a hard time because I set it up in my home office, and my home office is in the loft area of our house. And the kids come up here all the time because right outside my office is kind of like a movie room or another living room, if you want to call it that. And so that's where the kids like to hang out. That's where they bring their friends and everything. And they were like making fun of me, man. They're like, hey, Dad, when you going to use that podcast stuff? I'm like, really? One day. You watch one day. And so fast forward, that was hey, man, I think this would be a good idea. I got really serious about it, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, at least kind of in my thoughts and the theory behind what I wanted to talk about. And I started writing. And so I was like, well, hey, maybe it's not a podcast, maybe it's a book. And so I started writing. Anyways, I started kind of capturing my story and things. And fast forward, I said, well, maybe the podcast thing's the way to go because people tell me I have the gift of gab. So you be the judge of that. And so I got to thinking about it, but honestly, man, and you know this because we've talked about this before, it was self-doubt. And it was, I don't know, is anybody going to listen to it? Am I going to look or sound stupid? On and on and on. And so it was, I want to do it. I got a vision, but it was self-doubt and just, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe now's not the right time. So 18 days ago, we are in North Carolina which, by the way, for those that don't know, that is not the state that I live in. And so we're out of town. Us and another couple took our kids and we went out of town to like one of these resort style hotels. And we wanted to get away for the weekend. I let the kids hang out, do things, kind of kick off the holiday season. We were going to do some final Christmas shopping and just spend time together, right? And I wake up. So this would have been the first morning, I'm waking up in the hotel and I'm cruising through social media like a normal morning, drinking coffee. And I see this Chance Craven post and I love reading your stuff. And so I'm reading it. You're talking about taking photos. And this is what I love about what you do. And we're going to get more into it in a minute. You have a great way of hooking people and getting their attention. But then the message that you deliver is just unbelievable when you really stop and think about it. So you got me with, you're talking about photos and you're talking like, hey man, they may not be the best photos, on and on and on. And it's the mission and it's what you're doing. And I read this post and I said, man, I just felt compelled to share it. And so I did. And I kind of put my own little flair on it because I'll share a lot of things, but often I'll put my thoughts with it too. And so when I shared it, I talked about the world sometimes feels like it's full of pessimism. And what if there was a little more optimism, right? And I think I said something like a little bit of optimism, we might could start a movement. And so I shared that and didn't think anything else about it. Got ready. We head to the mall. And this mall we go to is, bro, I can't even tell you. It's like 2 miles. So it's this big round circle and the food court's in the middle. Yeah, it's massive. It's like a football stadium, but a mall. And so we get there. I am not that excited, by the way. We start walking around and I get a text from a buddy of mine named Matt. He's not somebody that I talk to every day. We're both busy. He's a firefighter in another state. And we met at the Executive Fire Officer program up at the NFA and been a great friend of mine. He was in my cohort and he's one of those people I bounce stuff off of. And I wasn't expecting it, but I got a text from him and it was simple. It just said, hey, thanks for sharing what you did this morning. I needed that. And I thought for a minute and I said, I needed that too. And that's what I wrote it. And so I look at my wife, Yvonne, and I said, Yvonne, this morning I shared this post that Chance wrote. It's really impactful to me. Matt wrote back and said, thanks for sharing. I needed that. And so to me, I took that as a sign. And I tell Yvonne, I said, what do you think? She goes, I think you're right. And I said, all this doubt in the back of my mind where I'm thinking, I don't know if I can do this. But I said that impacted somebody. And when you share something impactful, you don't know what other people are going through. There's so much going on in everybody's life. And that might be the one thing, the catalyst for them that day that turns their crap day into a positive one and makes a difference in their life. Yeah. And so it hit me. And I'm like, man, maybe this is a sign. And I told my wife, I said, maybe I should do that podcast thing. And she didn't laugh, which is a sign. That's a sign too. She goes, no, I think you should. I think it'd be great. And so I'm on cloud 9. So now we're hanging out. We're, doing the Christmas shopping thing. And so fast forward maybe 2 or 3 hours. It's been a minute. It's been a couple miles. And so I'm walking. I look to my left and out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, right? Like this, there's no way. I look over and in the same mall, like 50 feet from me is Matt, the dude that sent me the text message. He's like 50 feet away.
He does not live in the same city as the mall.
Correct. Let me go into that a little bit. So I'm over 3 hours from home, right? This is like 3 hours from where we live. So this is not a place that I frequent a lot.
Yep.
All right. Matt, he also does not live in this city. It's a couple hours from where he's at. So he doesn't frequent this place a lot. What are the chances? The same day he texts me and tells me, hey, man, this message you sent on social media, I needed that. Not only did I get that message, but I run into the guy in the same place in the mall, same day. So I walk over to him and he probably thinks I'm absolutely insane because I'm pretty excited. I'm like, man, he turns around. And we start catching up, and I'm like, dude, what are the chances? And we caught up a little bit. So how's the family? Talk to his wife and my wife know each other, and have a good 10-minute conversation or so before we have to move on and keep doing the family thing. But as we're stepping away, I turn to my wife and I'm like, all right, that's it. Done. I'm doing it. I can't not accept that as a sign. Now you got the wife also giving you some confirmation. And that still shocks me. Like, I got hair standing up on my arms right now because that one day changed everything. And that's what gave me the courage. And I hate to say that because it's not like it's this super hard thing to do.
I wouldn't downplay it like it is. Don't downplay it.
Well, you're correct. There's a little bit of vulnerability out there when you go on camera and you go on microphone and you're talking about things, because if you're a good podcaster or if you're a good guest, such as yourself, you lay it all out there on the line. That's what I love about those that I follow, that podcast, and the guests that I follow, you included, is that you lay it out there. And it's like, hey, man, this is how I feel. Yeah.
Because December 8th, I make this post. December 8th, you see Matt in the mall. You text me saying, hey, man, thank you for the encouragement. I'm pondering something. This is confirmation. And then 2 days later, 48 hours later, you post on your own social that you're going to drop something soon. So now you've created accountability. Now you've created like, hey, it's out there. So now people are going to be like, hey, man, you said something was coming January 4th. What is it? Where is it? It's the 6th now. So that is courageous. Like, I do think that accountability is something that we all encourage, but we're less likely to throw on ourselves. And you have done that by saying like, hey, I'm out here, I'm doing this. And so I commend you for that. Don't downplay the courageous part, because it does take some testicular fortitude, some gumption to do something uncomfortable. For 23 years, you've been in the fire service. You've been in a band. We won't mention band names or anything like that.
No.
So you got very comfortable where you are. This is uncomfortable. You're putting yourself out there. So I'm proud of you for that. Let's talk about the name.
Yeah, well, so the name and the general idea, right?
Yep.
To back up a second, when you said accountability, I put that out there, and immediately I'm getting like text and, DMs and stuff on social media like, what are you going? I don't know if anybody read like the initial post. So I edited the original and put PS, I'm not going anywhere, because immediately people are like, are you leaving? I'm like, I love where I work. I like, no, it's not. This is like in addition to that. And so that was the first thing. The second thing is, what in the world is this about? Including my mom, who is not tech savvy. So I'm going to have to walk her through how to find this thing, right?
Yep.
Like when we release it. But like, Kevin, what's going on? What is all this about? And I'm like, oh gosh, like if there's anybody that you have to like explain yourself to worse than your mother, please tell me who it is. Cause it's like, oh God, like here comes that self-doubt again. I'm waiting for her to be like, is this like the band thing again?
Now, why are you doing this?
Yeah. Well, that's probably more like my mom. You sounded more like Southern lady, but anyways, so the name. All right, that was the other common question when people heard about it. So what am I going to call this? I wanted something unique. I wanted something people would remember. So I started reflecting on what the purpose was for what I want to do, and said, okay, I want to share meaningful stories and things that's being done by firefighters, my story, their story, talk about leadership, mentoring, coaching, serving others, all the great things that exist in the fire service. And then I got to thinking about it. Simon Sinek once talked about the bookstore, your Barnes and Noble or wherever, and there's tons of stuff on self-help. There's a whole section on self-help, but where's the section on helping others? And I was like, hey, that's pretty impactful. I remembered that. I got a whole bookshelf of leadership and management type stuff, right? And I love it. Everything from Creativity Inc. to Leadership on the Line, anything you can imagine. But I said, sometimes things are overanalyzed. I wanted to keep it simple. I wanted to keep it fun, wanted to keep it simple. And the details and the valuable information, I felt like sometimes get lost when people get way into the methodology or the ideology of what they're doing. And so I said, okay, I want to keep it simple. I want to tell a story. And so then I had this crazy idea, thought about when I was a kid. So for all you out there, think about when you were a kid. You had no formal training. You hadn't had art classes yet, but you knew how to draw a stick figure. You found out how to draw a stick figure. Your parents probably showed, or your siblings showed you how to do it, right? And if you could draw a stick figure, you could tell a story.
Mm.
And I said, that's it, man. I'm going to call it the stick figure purpose, because the purpose is to share meaningful information and stories to help other people, but to keep it simple, just like the stick figure. And so that stuck. I took off with it. And now I look back and I love that name. I love the fact that people are asking, where in the world did this come from? Hold on a minute. Let me tell you a story. And so that's it, man. I just got a vision to simplify the principles of serving, leading, coaching, mentoring, and uplifting other people. Like I said, you never know what people are going through. And there's a lot of great stuff happening out there in the fire service. And I don't think we talk about it enough.
Absolutely. So the last question I'll ask you is talking accountability and putting stuff out there. I have the privilege of being person one on this podcast.
That is right.
Where do you see it in December of 25 going into 26? What's the vision?
Well, Joe Rogan just hung up the phone a minute ago, so we were talking about that's a good question. I will say this. I am very open-minded. We'll figure it out as we go, but I have learned there's a lot of planning that goes on here. So I will say this. My goal is to do 2 episodes a month. So I've got a good lineup coming, and it's kind of a mixed bag of folks. A lot that people in this area may be familiar with. Got some out-of-state folks, too, from all different sides of what the fire service is doing. I don't want to give too much away, but I had a great conversation with a guy that's going to join me, hopefully here pretty soon. And again, talk about signs. I was saying, hey, man, I'd love for you to be on the show. This is what I'm doing. This is what I want you to talk about. He literally sends me a link, sends me a text message. He was on a show that morning. What's the chances of me reaching out? The very same thing I asked him to talk about, he had just done on a local radio show up in Connecticut.
Awesome.
All right.
Of course.
I'm like 2 for 2 at least, right? So I've got strong aspirations for what we're doing here. My goal is, one, that it's meaningful. And so there's a lot of hype that gets put out there, right? With stuff like this. There's an accountability piece that I own myself, and that my close friends and family are going to keep me in line with on that. So December of 2025, I hope we can look back at, a year and say, hey, we've got 24 or more episodes, but more so, I want to look back at the quality of what we've done and what we've talked about and, what we've put out there, because quality to me is a little more important than quantity, but I do have a goal in mind as far as how many episodes I want to do. But listen, if they can all live up to the same hype as Chance Craven, then in December of 2025, we'll be doing all right.
I see what you've done. Like, if you start low, the bar just gets higher and higher throughout the year. Like, you're marketing 101. You're doing a great job here.
No. Well, I thought I've got to bring on Chance because to some degree you've been through this, right? You've done something, you've done a lot of things, I'm sure, that are uncomfortable. You've kind of put yourself out there, and I really value your input and the information that you share. And that's what I love about you. You can't take all this knowledge and information with you. And if I can empower another person, such as you empowered me to do what we're doing here today, then who knows where we can go with this thing.
Absolutely.
The sky is the limit. And that's what I'm seeing more and more in the fire service today. You hear a lot of negative things out there about generational differences and stuff like this. And it ain't the fire service we grew up in. Well, it's not the fire service that we started in. It's not the fire service we grew up in. That statement is subjective to the person, right? But the times are different. And what I see today is when people get empowered to do things and they start a movement and they start doing things for the right reason, and the information they put out there, it just snowballs. And that's what I want to see more of. That's the kind of people I want to highlight. that's what I hope we do here with the Stick Figure Purpose. But anyways, thanks for allowing me to mouth vomit all that there for a minute.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. I mean, you mentioned in the original post, your words, it's entirely possible to spark a movement around something you believe in. And by you just jumping out of the boat, per se, and doing what you feel was on your heart, like, you don't know the ripple effects of that until a year from now, whenever 24 podcasts have been uploaded, 5 years from now. With Honor Supply Co., we often say it's more than a photo. I wholeheartedly believe that what you're doing is more than a podcast. It's more than an interview, because you don't know. It's the medium that you're using, but you have no idea what effect it'll leave and impact people with. So proud of you, man.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And you said jump out of the boat. It made me think about something. Jumping out of the boat made me think of one of our experiences.
Literally.
The guy had a camera in his hand, and he literally jumps out of a boat to go get this incredible footage. And so when you said jump out of the boat, I'm like, oh, that's part of our story, bro.
Yeah, this is it right here.
It's just us. Yeah, man. So let's look back. A lot of people probably know I came from the upstate South Carolina area. I was up in Greenville. That's where I spent most of my life and career up until a little over 3 years ago. Came down to the coast. And so you were doing amazing things. When I first heard about Chance Craven, I'll be honest, I heard about Chance, not Honor Supply Co., from a couple of guys in the fire department up in Greenville, and I think they knew you locally from a lot of work you were doing, I believe, over in the Powdersville area, over in Anderson County. And you were making some ripples in the world of the fire service as far as forward-thinking stuff. And I know you were doing some marketing. We'll get a little bit of that in a minute. But you were really starting to get people's attention with the work you were doing of capturing what firefighters are doing in the field, the work they do. And that's kind of where you caught my attention. So talk to me a little bit about kind of how Honor Supply Co. got started, kind of the Chance history, how you got to that point, and then we'll get into all the awesome things that you got going on today.
Yep. So back in like 2014, 15, 30 years old, many life experiences where I'd been around first responders and a lot of people who chose service as a priority in their life. Just kind of felt this calling and weight of like, man, we always wait until good people die before we honor who they are. Like, you look at the fire service historically, great people pass away and we line the streets and we wave flags and we do huge processions. But what about whenever a firefighter just does something good? And the fire service is unique because most people don't sign up for it for self-recognition and to be considered a hero and all these things. Even though you have some that do. That's another podcast, another day. And so back in 2015, started to put kind of the idea to paper. And my background is marketing, social media, and stuff like that. And so just shared the idea, very similar to you, had the idea, started to put a couple things out there, and then just life experiences, put it on the shelf. Like, hey, this is, formed the LLC, did everything. And then life continues to go on, actually become a firefighter with the city of Spartanburg back in 2018, spend almost a year and a half there. Really then get to learn how much of the fire service is not shared in the general public, how much firefighters actually do. And so walking away from Spartanburg in 18, really started to think through like, okay, I've had this calling, this weight on my heart. Now I have this experience that many other photographers don't have. What if I just pick up the cameras and start documenting it and sharing it? And one of the first departments to let me do that here in the upstate was Powdersville. At the time, old Brad Kuykendall was the chief of Powdersville Fire Department.
Oh, B-Rad.
B-Rad.
Oh, B-Rad.
Went in, sat down at the Chick-fil-A Powdersville with him and Jake Moffitt. And again, we talk about trying things. And at the time, I thought that the way to do Honor Supply Co. was to sell fire department websites. Hey, if you let me build your website, I can come in and I can take all these photos. You can use them on your site, but then I can use them for Honor Supply. And long story short, we're not building fire department websites anymore. We just take photos and give them away. But Brad was one of those first people. It's like, man, I believe in it. I think that even on a volunteer level, people need to understand what we do. And so he gave me access to their active 911, allowed me to run some calls with them, signed up as a volunteer through the department of those things. And that's where people started to see like, whoa, wait a minute, y'all run calls at 2 a.m. and house fires and venting roofs and all these other things. And it kind of, I say snowballed. That was now almost 6 years ago, where then I get introduced to somebody else. And then in 23, I'm out doing Task Force 1 stuff and meet you. And I don't even think you and I ever had a conversation while you lived in the upstate.
I think you're right.
After you took the job in St. John's and moved south that we happened to meet each other through Task Force 1. But even that, like being given permission to come document what firefighters from all across the state do, not just at their fire department, but on this team that's specialized that people volunteer for, and share that content, man, I get fired up about it. So that's a lot of verbal vomit that I don't think directly answered any specific question, but
no, man,
yeah, here we are.
Listen, without a doubt, Honor Supply Co. is, to me, one of the hottest things going right now, not because of Chance Craven, but because of the vision and what you're doing, because who doesn't want to be part of honoring what firefighters do? I think of the people that you've taken pictures of and photos of, or that your team has, and we look back at your Jay Mullers. We look back at Sean, and that one hit hard. Yep. No doubt that if you've been to a firefighter funeral, it's one of the most somber moments, but also one of the most respectful things you can ever be a part of, just because of the tradition, but also because of what it means. And for you to be able to find a way to honor those people now, ultimately, it continues to honor them, unfortunately, after they're gone, and we don't want any more of those. But it really opened my eyes with Sean. We can talk about that for a minute, because he and I were close. I think back to when I joined Task Force 1, and a good buddy of mine, Matthew Littleton, out of the Easley area, is who recruited me and pulled me on there along with Chad Beam. But Sean had this way of doing things. And I believe, if I'm correct, Sean was a early believer in Honor Supply Co. and what you're doing too.
Absolutely.
And I truly think that was because of his heart. He was a larger than life guy, but I look back at some of the photos of Sean Hamilton. For those that don't know, Sean passed away of natural causes last year. But I look back at some of the photos you captured of Sean, and when I'm wiping away my tears, it's incredible. And I'm like, this is what we're talking about. But it's not just for those that are no longer here with us. It's to honor the people that are still here doing what they do every single day, getting out there and busting it for 24 straight hours. We'll talk about some of that in a minute. But it's incredible. And that's why I say Honor Supply is the hottest thing, because it's not about the person or the team. It's the mission. So backing up a minute, when you were talking about B-Rad over in Powdersville, and I also know Chief Sonnenfeld was one of the early believers that allowed you to come into ERMO. Talk for a minute for our listeners about the amount of trust. And so for any fire department team out there, we'll talk about chiefs, right? If they're allowing you to come into their department, your Greg Farley's, your Brad Kuykendall's when he was in Powdersville, your Chief Sonnenfeld, all those guys, talk about the relationship that is necessary that you have to build to have that trust to be able to do the things that Honor Supply Co. is doing.
Yeah. So I think that on one hand, you call it blind faith, and that was Chief Sonnenfeld. He was a guy that we met during the floods of Columbia, not in anything to do with Honor Supply Co. I had a background in disaster relief. At the time, I was going to a church called New Spring and was helping New Spring with disaster relief. And so met Chief Sonnenfeld kind of in a time of chaos. Half his city's underwater. We're serving him. I share with him a crazy idea of becoming a firefighter. ERMO actually sponsors me at the South Carolina Fire Academy. That's what allowed me to become a firefighter. And so we had a foundational relationship before I ever shared honor supply with him. And then coming back to him and saying, hey, do you think I can come ride along with you guys? This was before I had become a firefighter, though. So getting certificates, but not a job yet. Can I come ride with you? And he was absolutely yes. Like, come document what we do. And that was almost 10 years ago. He was the first department that ever allowed me to do it. And so that trust there, not messing it up, is also what led to, during Muller's passing, I was the person that Chief Sonnenfeld called and said, hey, man, there's going to come a day where Muller's son needs to understand the impact he left in the world. And so if you can come document the funeral, not to document a funeral, but to create images that his son can look at one day to say, man, people really loved my dad. And trust us to not publicize those, share it with the general media, try to make money off of it, or just use it in wrong ways. Like, that trust was already there. And that's something that, like, I can't put into words what that means. And then you fast forward to the Chief Farleys at Parker, who, man, there's not another chief in the upstate, if South Carolina, that on a daily basis has said, hey, man, here's everything you need. Honor the guys that are on our team. Like, show up to the calls, document them. Before I was able to receive gear through Safe Industries, Chief Farley was like, here's a coat, here's pants, like anything else you need to honor us, like, let me know. And so it is one of those things where it takes relationships to kind of open the doors. It's also one reason why I've been very hesitant to grow quickly, because it takes a little bit of time to establish trust. And I'll use St. John's as an example. Like, during hurricanes in 2024, you guys were like, hey, come down and photograph it, shoot things, document the task force. Well, if I send a Yahoo down there, the head is down there for the wrong reasons, and then they documented something that the general public doesn't need to see. Not even necessarily that your department does wrong, but that doesn't need to be shared with the general public, and then they share it. Well, now that's like, unless it's Chance, we're not going to open the door for people. And so trust is a foundational part of what we're doing, because to get the real and authentic, the aspects of the fire service that I'm passionate about sharing, you have to build that trust on a chief level all the way down to the line in the firefighters. Because a chief can say yes, but then if we don't have trust with firefighters, man, the moment we walk into a firehouse, everyone turns their shoulder. They don't act natural. They feel like they have to do something that they naturally wouldn't do. Because we have trust, we can capture guys sitting in the bay around the table. We can document a meal and no one feel like they have to, like, prim and proper, let me go put on my Class A's because the photographer's here, and like eat dinner. And so the trust to get into a department very much starts at the chief level. Even in Asheville, before Hurricane Helene, we went up and did a full presentation with the entire command staff. They didn't know Chance. They had heard about Honor Supply Co. And so I went up there. It was a quick 15-minute presentation at the beginning of a staff meeting, but I shared, this is what we do. This is why we do it. And then we just answered some somewhat hard questions, but they were honest questions. Like, really, you give it all away? How? Like, how do you pay your bills? Like, what do you do? And they're not being arrogant or pompous. Like, it's a real question that people have. Like, 5 years of giving away free content, like bullcrap. Like, what do you get out of it? And so just taking the time to answer these questions and establish trust. Then Hurricane Helene happens. Their firefighters are doing search and recovery, which is not something that many people would be given access to document. And I'm asked to come up there and not bring food or supplies or anything else. It's just, hey, come up here and document what our team's really doing. And so it is 100% built on the foundation of trust. And that is not something I take lightly.
You know, you mentioned Safe Industries and the gear thing, but also I think of Charlie that's working with him, and I think he's watched you and he's seen how you do things to build that trust. And you can ask our guys down where I'm at locally, and when he comes into town to get pictures of stuff that, whatever. We did a Paratech demo a couple of weeks ago, and he came and captured it. They don't even think about it. And it's because they know him. Not only do they know him, they love the guy. And
Absolutely.
This is coming from Charlie. He's like, man, like the way those guys treat me. And I think he comes in with genuine interest in what they're doing. You know, his dad is a firefighter, his grandfather was a firefighter, his uncle was a firefighter.
Yep.
Like, he gets it. And when he comes in, he's just a good dude. He's there for the right reasons, and people just kind of bring him in just like you, and you become part of the family. And then it makes what you do and, you know, what he's doing on a different level so easy, because it's
Yep.
at that point, you're part of the family. So it's like dad walking around with the video camera on Christmas morning. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
100%.
Well, I guess you're not the video guy. You're more the still photo guy. But
Yeah, a
you're
camera.
the dad walking
camera.
around with the iPhone 16 and the Canon. So,
And Charlie's a great example of somebody that, so on our Supply Co right now, as we build out our team, both for insurance purposes and liability, we're only bringing people on the team that have actually been firefighters. And Charlie, unfortunately, has not been a firefighter, even though he's been around it for his whole life, because his dad's been one since he was born. At 19 years old, he's been given an opportunity to work for a local company as a content creator. And I think that's a great example of anyone that's wanting to jump into kind of this fire content game and media, whether it's with Honor Supply Co. or just buffing calls in their own area. It is that, hey, you have to establish trust with these people. Like, unfortunately, we also live in a world where people use this medium, cameras, to point out every deficit and negative thing within the fire service. And so historically, firefighters are used to having their picture taken at a grocery store and then coming home and finding negative Nancy complaining online that firefighters are shopping in the fire truck. Or, hey, they're on a call and they don't have on their safety vests, and someone took a cell phone photo, posted it online, and now they're getting written up because they didn't have on their safety vests on the side of the road. And it was literally the 0.5 of a second between them getting out of the truck and putting the vest on. And so it is, whether it's us with Honor Supply Co., a company, a buff, like, it comes down to trust. And that is something that there are people like Chief Sonnefeld who have that blind faith. Hey, man, I trust you. I appreciate you. Come in. And then there are those other people that are like, hey, man, I hear what you're saying, but you're going to have to prove it first. Like, here's a little bit more, here's a little bit more. And I don't think as the creatives, we can hold or take offense to anybody either giving it to us freely or asking us to earn that trust. And that's
right.
something that even with the task force, man, I was extremely fortunate to have a friend named TJ that introduced me to Sean and Chad. Sean and Chad at the time, hey, we believe in what you're doing, but it's going to take time to convince everybody else and the powers to be to bring you on in a capacity where you can photograph National Guard helicopters doing risky stuff by having people lowered out of the side of helicopters and things like that. So just give us the time to kind of advocate on your behalf, and then you'll be able to take all these photos. And so if I took offense, like, what, they don't know who I am? Like, are you serious? Like, they don't trust me? And walked
Chance?
off.
Who's Chance?
I would have never gotten the photos of Sean that we have today, not knowing that he was going to pass. That's never the goal. It's literally to honor them before they pass. But because that trust was extended and I kind of endured the process, myself and you and everyone that loves Sean has photos now that we will cherish forever.
That's right.
So trust is important. Sometimes it's given freely and sometimes you have to earn it. And I think that's
right.
something that, yeah, we all have to be okay if earning it is the alternative.
That's right. Yeah, man. I mean, you were there for Sean. You captured when they lowered him, into the field by his house. You know, the last hoist he ever did when he was retiring. Going back to somebody I mentioned earlier, a friend of mine, Matthew Littleton, also was a member of the task force. Dude just got honored at their award ceremony for 18 years that he spent with the team and did more for the comms world than anybody I know of. Matthew, he was known for dropping nuggets. And one of the nuggets that stuck with me, it starts with relationships. And you talked about relationships, and you never know the moment when that relationship you may create will open a door for you in the future. You know, you've probably got hundreds of stories of relationships you built with people, whether it be at a scene or at a training event, that have turned around and opened the door for you. But I agree with you that trust is huge. And you talked earlier about accountability. I think with trust being that foundation, having trust, and this is far beyond just what we're talking about here, right? You can apply this to lots of aspects of the fire service and your personal life. But when you have built trust with people, then it allows you to be able to hold them accountable, right? Because I know who Chance is. Chance knows who I am. We've built that trust level that now if I go to you and I'm like, hey, we need to talk about what happened here. It's not a personal thing. They have built a relationship of trust with you, and now they can hold you accountable to a degree. And I think that gets overlooked so many times in the fire service now because we don't take the time to get to know people well enough. And I am the pot calling the kettle black. It gets harder as you ascend through the ranks. You founded a company or a couple of companies, and it gets harder as you ascend that rank structure there. But it doesn't make it impossible. It just means you have to be more intentional about doing it. And that's what I continue to tell myself is you have to be intentional about building relationships. And that's the key. From there, then you can start building trust, and it just blossoms into, whatever comes next. It's an organic thing. But man, it's crazy. So tell me about one bad tour. Like, I'm looking on social media. Okay. This was a couple weeks ago. And I see a video, and this video is of you pumping gas. By the way, my favorite part was when the DOT guy pulls in.
Gosh.
And he's like, beep, beep, beep. I love that.
Freaking beeping alarm, bro.
Absolutely ruins the video in your mind, but it was awesome. It was hilarious. It brought a moment of laughter to me. But again, you got my attention, and you're pumping fuel, and then you start saying, hey man, send me any questions you got. And so I imagine you're driving down the road. I guess you're coming back from Florida. Is that right?
Going to One Bad Tour, driving down to it. Yep.
So you're like looking at all these comments that people are sending in and all this stuff, and you're answering it. But anyways, enough of me mouth vomiting. Tell me about One Bad Tour, and ultimately what was the main takeaway that you got coming out of that?
Yep. So One Bad Tour is a 24-hour training scenario / test of mental and physical fortitude put on by a company called Proactive Rescue Operations and led by some firefighters out of Orlando. Basil Abraham, I can never say his last name. I apologize. Basil, don't get on to me. But the first class, the instructors themselves kind of tested this theory. Hey, what can we do in 24 hours that's a test, but also isn't like so ridiculous that no one could ever compete it type thing. And then they just finished their 5th class. I'll actually go down 2 weeks and document the 6th class, and then the 7th will be in March. And it is between 30 and 40 firefighters from all over the country.
Wow.
Hundreds of people apply to each one now. And about 200 of those are instantly eliminated in the application process. Basil will tell you, man, this is about the basics. Like, there's no crazy new YouTube scenarios that we're trying. Like, it's the basics. So if you can't fill out the application correctly and follow these basic instructions, you're not making it to toe the line. So
makes
simple
sense.
question is like, hey, name your fire department and make sure to include the city and state. And so you'll have people that put the Orlando Fire Department, assuming that they're talking about Florida, but they don't put Florida, and your application gets thrown away.
Wow.
So of the 300 that complete the application correctly, about 10% of those make it to the actual event. And that's mainly so that the event itself can have a good cadre-student ratio. This isn't about having the most people come through. It's about making sure that the people that are there are quality people and get a quality experience. And the event starts between 9 and 10 a.m. and lasts to 9 or 10 a.m. the next morning.
Wow.
And it is 24 hours of some PT. But again, it's no crazy PT. It's mountain climbers. It's push-ups. It's calisthenics. It's putting gear on in a allotted time that most firefighters should be able to put their gear on. Don and doff that over and over again, fatigued, tired, in the dirt. class 4, like poured down rain on these guys. And so they're having to put on bunker gear, just soaking wet in mud. And then all throughout the night, they're doing rescue operations. They're doing multiple burns. They're hoisting people in and out of windows and out of holes. Like, it is an intense experience. What I get from it truly is kind of selfish in the fact that, man, you can go to firehouses all over the country, and there are people that get paid to be firefighters. That does not guarantee that they're firefighters. And at these events, you get 30 to 40 people that truly understand the calling and the responsibilities and the weight of, and you may respond to another headache call and you're frustrated because it's the 13th medical call of the day, and almost anybody can show up and hand somebody aspirin. But you may also be called to a fully involved house fire where multiple victims are inside and you have to get them out. And that depends 100% on your training, your abilities, your physical abilities, your mental capacity. And these people that show up to One Bad Tour put themselves in these situations so that they are better prepared to respond to those type of emergencies. And so for me, it's like, man, these are 100% the people that we want to honor. Like, these are the people that get it. Most of the people there, they never even tell their friends that they've been like selected for One Bad Tour. They're just like, hey, can you do a swap with me on this day? Because I'm going to go handle some stuff.
Yeah.
And then they come down and endure the suck. And then they go back and they're like, yeah, it's at One Bad Tour. Like, they're extremely humble human beings. And that is, man, I'm fired up about it because those are the type of people we want to honor. So
you did a great job. Just looking at what you shared. One, I think it brings attention to it. And so when people are doing awesome stuff out there, whether it's training, anything for the fire service, when you bring attention to it, like, that just helps build momentum. Not that they build momentum, because it sounds like they're getting, plenty of applications, but I think it just brings more meaning to it. Like, you're helping, I don't know, whatever percentage of the fire service out there may not know about One Bad Tour. They might not have heard about it, but there may be people out there that they're looking for the next challenge. And I'm hearing you say the mental fortitude. So just listening to the way you described it, I imagine, much like the smoke diver program, a lot of it is, the mental fortitude and you being able to convince yourself, hey, I can do this, or I can do this on no sleep or sleep deprivation, which we all know that's a hot topic in the fire service. So it's putting yourself in those positions when you're sleep deprived, you may be hungry, you're wet, you're irritated, all those things. And it's, hey, I know I can do this. I was just reading something and it made me think about it, out of Darlington, South Carolina. Unfortunately, on Christmas Eve, I believe it was, there were 2 fire fatalities, unfortunately, children in Darlington County. Did you read what the fire chief wrote?
I have not.
All right, let me see if I can find this. I'm going off script here, but man, when I read this, it gave me cold chills, but you just brought it back to my attention, because when you were talking about mental fortitude, this is what, came to mind. And so, see if I can find this. All right, I'm going to give a shout out to Lee Hopkins. Do you know Lee? Fat Baby's Junkyard Dogs.
Yep.
I love that guy. So Lee's the one who shared it. And so I'm going to read it to you. And man, this makes the hair stand up on my arm. So I gave you the background story, right? Unfortunately, it sucks anytime. It sucks a big bag of ass. But the fact that it was on Christmas Eve makes it even worse. But Lee shared, he's in the Darlington area, and Lee shares a quote from Ricky Flowers. So Chief Ricky Flowers with Darlington County. And he says, some guys sign the back of a check every shift at the firehouse, just cashing in on everyone else's work. Last night, our guy signed the front of the check and put in an all-out deposit. We preach all the time, be ready, search hard, and never quit, so on and so forth. All of that is true, and it's best practice. if you want to be the best, train the way you're going to have to fight in the worst possible situations. Sign the front of the check every day. I'm proud of our people from last night. Tragic outcome with the best effort that could have been made in the worst possible conditions. Man,
Yep.
hats off to those guys. Unfortunate situation, but to me, that was an epic show of leadership from the chief, to say the words that I just read there from Chief Flowers, because we all can probably put ourselves in that position and empathize with how those guys feel. Because whatever the situation was, and the outcome that we know was 2 fatalities. We don't know the full story, but we know from what the chief said, those guys gave it their all.
100%.
And they're dealing with that. And that's true leadership for the chief to identify that. And I love that when he said, some guys signed the back of the check, these guys signed the front. I'm like, I'm going to remember that. Like, so these guys signed, some guys signed the back of the check, just cashing in on everybody else's work. It made me think about that when you're talking about things like One Bad Tour and people down there giving it their all. Because, Chance, I'm going to tell you, man, I'm going to use the Fire Service Improvement Conference. I think it's a great conference that's about to go down here in January. Some awesome people going to be doing great things there. But I'll use that for an example. Use One Bad Tour for an example. These guys are showing like tried and true methods that are used in the real world. And it's done in an environment that they can control to some degree. So this is not, and I want to be very clear for those people out there, because I think a lot of training events get a bad rep because it's a lack of information on the person that is giving a subjective piece of feedback. So when they're like, well, this is not safe, you don't know that to be true.
Yep.
A lot of these events, like they're using NFPA 1403 as their standard for live fire and everything that they're doing there. I would argue that some of the ones that I've experienced, and I'll go back to the Fire Service Improvement Conference because I've spent a lot of time last year traveling around to the different locations and looking at the truck company class, looking at Jonah Smith's class, looking at all these things. And that's not true. These guys they're following, safety protocols. There's generally a higher than recommended instructor to student ratio. So again, my point being, when there's guys that want to go and find additional training out there to put tools in the toolbox, because let's be honest.
Yeah.
I don't care what profession you're in. I'm sure you still YouTube videos out there on how to capture this great image or how to do this, or how to do that.
Yep.
I mean, I can't tell you the amount of ones that I've looked at just to try to be a better content creator for podcasts. And I'm just getting started. But again, One Bad Tour, Fire Service Improvement, all these different people out there, these guys are going out there and they're putting themselves out on the line, because a lot of these guys are going out there on their own time and their own dime. They're doing swaps, they're doing whatever, and they just want to be a better firefighter. It's not for guts and glory. It is for the product that they're going to give the community. And I talk a lot about serving others, because at the forefront of what we do, servanthood.
Yep.
Right? Like that's what firefighters do. We serve each other, right? Because I am my brother's keeper, but we also serve the community in which we're at. And I will argue we serve in the communities which we're not too, because I am a big proponent of automatic and mutual aid, which is a whole nother subject. Talk about a different time.
Another podcast.
I do not want to open that can of worms.
Yes.
But these guys are doing this to be a better firefighter so that they can be there for their brother. They can be there for that community member. They can be there for that person trapped in that hole. I have no doubt what we just read about in Darlington County, South Carolina, was a group of firefighters that were out there pushing themselves to the absolute limit of human capability to effect a rescue. And in that moment, it didn't work out to a positive outcome for the 2 people that lost their lives. But that does not mean that we can't honor what those firefighters did that day, because I think it's important. We got to be there for our brothers and our sisters, because in that moment, that might be one of the worst days of their life, because they're going to carry that burden. hats off to those guys in Darlington. Hats off to Chief Flowers for throwing those awesome words out there. And sorry, I got way off track, but that
You're fine.
man.
Well, I think it comes down to, so full transparency, I'm no longer a firefighter for anyone listening. And so I just get to armchair quarterback everything, talk trash from the sidelines. But I do think it is one of those things that, like, in Darlington, they're saying they gave 100% effort and they tried. And again, I don't know enough about the call. But if that's true, then those guys can fall asleep at night despite the horrific outcome, knowing they gave 100%. And we've mentioned a lot already in this podcast about authenticity and truth. On the other side, in the last 90 days, you now have stories coming out in their volunteer department, and there was 2 fatalities. And now that photos are being shared of this home after the fact, there is a completely tenable space, fire not blowing out of a window, a child recording on 911 saying that they're in this room next to this object, and firefighters did not save that person. And again, I don't know anybody from this call. I don't know all of the details, but the evidence that's been presented so far shows that, hey, these guys maybe did not give 100% effort. And we live in a world where, for the longest time since social media has started, those with the loudest voice have kind of controlled the narrative and said things like, oh, 24 hours of training? Unsafe. Shouldn't do that. It's uncalled for. And that's kind of led people to believe these things. And now that there's people like yourself that are like, hey, we're going to focus on the positives. We're going to start sharing these good things. More and more stories are going to start to come out of good things. But that also means the truth about people that aren't carrying the weight, that can't single man throw a 24-foot ladder. These different aspects of the fire service that really should be the standard, they're going to start to be held accountable. Hey, man, you signed up for this. You either signed the front of the check or the back of the check. Which one is it?
Right.
And even whenever I was in the fire service, Christmas Eve of 2017, there was an apartment fire in Spartanburg. There was a firefighter by the name of Chris Lamb. I vividly remember this fire happened at like 6 a.m. in the morning, right at shift change. And so I'm rolling up on scene. And there was reports of a 6-month-old child that was in this apartment. And Lamb goes in, and he's searching this room. Mask completely glazes over, says it's looking like through styrofoam. He can't see anything. Can't find the 6-month-old. Comes out, told again, the 6-month-old is in there. Goes back inside. And after searching, he's walking down the road, and like the back of his air pack is crisp. His nameplate on his coat is melted off. His face piece is glazed over. But Lamb is one of the most humble humans that I've ever met. He doesn't post about it on social. He doesn't talk about it. And thankfully, there was the 6-month-old was removed from the apartment prior to the firefighters even arriving. But Chris understood the assignment, and he was literally going into his apartment 2 times, almost blind because his mask was glazed over. You can't even see anything, searching for something. He understands it. And I've seen him train hundreds of hours for moments like that. And those are the guys that I'm just like, man, he's never going to talk about this. Most of the firefighters in Darlington are never going to post about what happened and why they did it or why they failed or why people died or what could have gone better or worse. Like the most humble humans out there are these people that have signed up to be firefighters, whether male or female. And they go and they do all this. They invest the time, and then they go back home and they live with their families and they do what they do. And then they show up 3 days later on shift. And they just don't talk about how awesome they are. And that's the type of people that I want to honor.
Right.
So
I think what's awesome in my experience with the folks that go and they seek this, we'll call it additional training, the ones that come back, and you're right, they're not talking about themselves or how awesome they are, but the ones that come back and share the knowledge that they gain to help somebody else better.
Yep.
And help somebody else better. And sure, you can't replicate 24 hours of suck. Like, I get that, right? Just no different than Jocko Willink can't replicate, Hell Week and the SEAL teams. But when you share the nuggets of information that you gained and with the intent of helping another person maybe be a little bit better or a lot better, I think that's what we're looking for. At least that's what I'm looking for. We're looking for people that have the values of the organization and us versus like raw skill. We can teach that. We can send them to people and we can get them the skills. I think it's finding somebody that has the willingness to want to do more. I say all the time, don't let the minimum standard be your maximum effort. So ISO says you have to have X amount of hours for training, right? That's the minimum standard. And so you should be looking to do above and beyond like that. But
initiative is not the common theme throughout the fire service unless you look for it.
That's right.
And that's where I'm excited now to have been around long enough, photographing enough people to see some of those people that have taken initiative, not just meeting the standards, but exceeding them, are starting to get promoted and be in positions where it's like, all right, this is changing and impacting culture in a great way.
That's right.
So it's exciting.
I think there's two key pieces of things that I would throw out there, and that's initiative. That's you as an individual. But then when we talk about, there's all the self-help, but where's the stuff about helping others? That's where I think of motivation. And, you motivated me to do this. I may motivate somebody else to do something else, but it's that thing of, I'll give you a short story of a guy I work with that talks about when he was a company officer. He's like, hey, his driver at the time, who is now a company officer, would keep him motivated in ways like, hey man, we're going to go work out today. We're going to go throw ladders. And he's like, I don't really want to. I'm tired. I had a late night with the kid last night. He kept me up. And, this is that idea of leading up, which is also a great book, by the way. And so, his engineer and his firefighter would be like, hey man, we need to go out here and throw some ladders. We need to get some reps in. We need to go out here and pull some hose, whatever the case may be. We need to go work out. That was them leading up and motivating him. And he tells a really impactful story about that, right? So, initiative as a person, as yourself, having that is super important, but then being able to motivate other people, which goes back to having a relationship with them so you can say those things and hold them accountable, is really needed. But
different. Yeah.
So got 4 numbers here. 1736.
Yep.
Tell me about 1736 and what your vision is behind one of these new initiatives that you kicked off with Honor Supply Co.
Yep. So we joked earlier about giving away all the content for free, not making people pay for it. I have been extremely blessed in a professional standpoint of having retainer clients that have nothing to do with the fire service outside of safe industries. That's my only client that's fire service related. Everything else is from interior design to civil contracting. Those people have paid me enough to where my wife can stay home, we can pay all of our bills, and I can do Honor Supply Co. And as more and more people came to me and said, hey, I want to be a part of it, like, can I cover your hotel room? Can I pay for you to come take photos of this place? I've always said no, because I didn't want to make people feel awkward if someone could pay or couldn't pay. And then in doing that, I started to miss opportunities of photographing specific things because my real work got in the way. And I don't say got in the way in a negative standpoint. Like, I've loved all the clients I've worked with. But when Sean passed away, there was a very real moment of like, hey, I'm going all in on this. And go all in on this, I still have to be able to pay my bills. I still have to be able to do things. So let's come up with a way that people can invest financially, be a part of it. I can start to draw a salary from Honor Supply Co. at some point. And that led to 1736. The number originates from when Benjamin Franklin created the first volunteer fire service that focused on serving the entire community. Right. Before 1736, there were other fire companies already in establishment. So that's a whole argument where people are like, he wasn't first. Okay, I hear you. But it is documented that he was the first one that created a company, fire company, that would serve everybody, whether you were part of a specific insurance group or not, or lived in a specific area. So 1736 is the premise that, hey, we're going to continue serving people from all over. That's where the number comes from. And then what someone gets by signing up for 1736 is whenever you pay $17.36 a month, You get an issue of the quarterly journal. We've now released one of those. Another one gets print and shipped in January. You get entered into a monthly drawing. January's drawing will be a Go Ruck backpack. And then you get 17% off all the merch in our store. And the idea is that slowly with momentum, those numbers will start to build. In December, our goal is 100. We're sitting at like 70 right now. In all of 25, we want to hit 1,000 people. So that would create about $17,000 in revenue a month, minus subscription costs and stuff like that for the journal. And then the big vision is that we find 1% of the fire service. We're not saying the best 1% or anything like that, but just 1% of people who believe in what we're doing. There's 1 million or so firefighters in the U.S. That gives us 10,000 people. That would give us roughly $173,000 per month to operate on. And whenever you think about that, the other content creators that I've met that are also firefighters, most of them are living on a firefighter's salary. And in some places, that's better than others. But as content creators, the idea of being able to pay another firefighter $1,000 a day rate to go document Fire Service Improvement Conference, or on the West Coast, there's Bay Area Fire Conference and Mile High Fire Conference, all these other places. There's so many events where, like we're talking about, you have people that are going above and beyond and getting more training to be able to take and literally hire 100 firefighter photographers all over the country to document these events every month. Like, the amount of people we would highlight and honor would be mind-blowing. So
awesome.
A lot of verbal vomit to say 1736 is like the funding model where what I never want to fall in the trap of, and I'm not saying this is bad, I'm not saying this is wrong, but whenever we go to photograph something to date, because we've never accepted a sponsorship or payment from anyone, I have never felt obligated to focus on this brand more than this brand, or this fire because they're wearing this color versus this color, or using this tool or driving this apparatus versus this apparatus. And in my marketing job outside of the fire service, it's very common and understood that if someone pays you $100,000 to sponsor something, well, man, there better be a ton of content with their logo in it.
Right?
I get it.
I could
That's
see that.
awesome. The goal behind 1736 is that as we grow it, we can still show up and take photos of every firefighter and not offend any particular brand because they don't see themselves enough. So yeah, that's 1736.
Oh man, I love it. I love it. Well, for those listening, if you haven't signed up for 1736,
yes,
now is your time.
Because go to honorsupplyco.com and
that's
you can
right.
sign up.
honorsupplyco.com and sign up. Because in December of 25, when you asked me what I was going to be doing,
yep,
I'm gonna check in with Chance. I'm gonna check in with Chance in December of 25, and we're gonna have 1,000 people. We can do it. All right.
Yes.
I'll carry that flag for you, brother, because I believe in what you're doing.
It.
So
thank you, sir.
All right. One of my favorite topics when it comes to Honor Supply Co. And it was the final one on my list because I'll save the best for last. Because who doesn't like a walk-in rescue, right?
Let's go.
This guy, Honor One. So
Honor One.
Going back to the old social media, I'm scrolling, and I see one day Chance has this crazy idea. He's like, hey, we have an opportunity to buy this rescue truck. And it's this, for me, I thought it was amazing. Ford chassis, walk-in rescue.
Yep.
And it just has this flair about it. So when I saw it, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this thing. But anyway, so you have this awesome idea. I know you tell a great story about your wife going, I don't know. And so Chance decides Honor Supply Co. would really benefit by having this walk-in rescue truck. So tell me about Honor One and tell me when this bad boy is being delivered to the upstate and what's your vision?
Absolutely. So being a visionary and a dreamer, I have always dreamed of having a walk-in rescue that we can repurpose almost into a rehab. But if a firefighter hears rehab, like that's boring, it's lame, like, a rehab, that's that. But if you turn a walk-in rescue into a rehab, completely different story.
Right. That is right.
the dream was always to kind of repurpose an older model, and truthfully it wasn't on like my bucket list until 2030. So 5 years away, which sounds like a long time, but it'll be here before we know it. And then one day, Jason Joanitas from the Midlands runs Soda City Training. He's always posting random stuff on his social media. He shares a rescue. It's not the one we're buying, but he shares a rescue walk-in. And I just comment on it. I'm like, man, one day, we're going to buy something like this, and I'm going to repurpose it, coffee machines, cold drinks, and basically a rolling photo cage, batteries, chargers, all these things. And so leave that there just as almost like accountability, putting the dream out there. And a firefighter from Jacksonville named Kyle Foley responds within minutes on my comment. He's like, man, that's a great idea. Let me know where to send the money. And I'm kind of like, well, bro, we're like 6 years from wanting to do this. I don't have anywhere to park it. I don't have my CDL. Like, we're still a scrappy startup. Like, we don't have thousands of dollars to outfit this thing yet. And so I'm like, okay. The rescue that Jason posted is $15,000. If I get 150 people to give $100, like, we can go buy this thing right now.
Let's do it.
So I dropped that in my Instagram stories. And hey, hypothetically, if I post this, would 150 of you give $100? And instantly people are like, yes, like, where do I send my money? Like, let's go. And then I share my stories. Like, I have not talked to my wife about this yet, but it looks like y'all are all saying yes, so I think we should do it. And then jokingly, my wife responds to the DM. Again, I have not talked to her yet. I don't know what it looks like to decorate a fire truck, but if I can help decorate it, I'm game. And I'm like, well, hold on. And so I'm like, I call her, and I'm like, are you joking or are you serious? Like, can I buy this? And she very much does what we've been married 12 years now, dated for 2 before that. So almost 15 years of life together. She does what she does really well in my life and balances me out. Like, hey, how much does insurance cost on this thing? Like, what kind of license do you need? Where are we going to park a 27-foot rescue truck that's almost 12 feet tall? And ask all those serious questions. And I'm like, we'll figure it out. She's like, all right, we'll go for it. What? We can buy a walk-in rescue? She's like, yes, let's go. And so we posted online and quickly try to get in touch with the guy from New Jersey. And he's like, man, this one's already sold. And it was an old Mac. It was sweet, had a crane on it. Like, very few walk-in rescues have had cranes on them. And I'm like, well, shoot, now I've put this out there. I got to find one that we can kind of rally behind. And quickly search the internet. God's divine grace. I find this 1989 C8000 Ford chassis on an E1 walk-in. The thing only has 20,000 miles on it. Piney Creek that we're buying it from, they're the second owner, runs on average 50 calls a year. 50 calls a year. Wow. The motor only has 2,000 hours on it. And so I share all this stuff, and almost 300 people gave everywhere from $500 to $5, basically through my Venmo. That's and right. We purchased this thing, went up there, saw it, test drove it, and then just through the logistics of everything, we're not able to bring it home until December 30th, which at the time of this podcast is 4 days away. And so Sunday night, we'll drive up to Piney Creek. We'll actually drive to Boone, stay in a Marriott there, and then wake up Monday morning and drive the rest of the way. A company out of Charleston called Holy City Towing is coming up with a low bed. We'll put the thing on a low bed, bring it down. There's a fire department in Spartanburg that's allowing us to store it in kind of one of their auxiliary firehouses that has some room in it. So it'll continue to live in a firehouse for the time being, inside, charged. And then I go in January to start my CDL course, get my Class B CDL because it has a GVWR of over 26,000 pounds, bunch of nerdy talk.
Oh, yeah.
But the goal is to spend 25 completely outfitting this how I want it to be. Shoot you straight, the moment I got my Class B, like, we're going to be whipping this thing all over the upstate.
It's on the streets. It's hitting the streets, man. Like, I'll tell you what, man.
We being from the city of Greenville, like, we joke, it has a Q on it. So I'm going to go through the city just hitting the Q on accident all the time.
Is that an ambulance? That ain't an ambulance. That's Honor 1, baby.
Oh, that's Honor 1, baby.
That's Honor 1. There she goes.
For those that don't know, the city of Greenville doesn't have Qs on their fire
Love
trucks.
those guys.
That's another conversation.
Love those guys.
But the goal is the whole driver's side, we're outfitting with a commercial coffee pot, refrigerators,
Nice.
stuff like that. So whether it's a conference or an actual call, training event, we can show up and serve firefighters out of it. The right side, we actually have a partnership that we're keeping under wraps right now, but it'll have some pretty fun stuff on the right side of it. And then the inside will be a rolling photo cage. And so that's where we'll keep all of our gear, our drones, battery chargers. It's got a light tower on it. So we can literally take it all over the Southeast for now. Probably end up in New York at the Joey D conference this fall. But yeah, it is, man. I'm excited about Old Honor
You'll put
1.
some miles on it.
We're gonna
You'll have more miles on that thing. You'll have more miles on that thing in a year from now than it's gotten in its lifetime. But
the old
I have a serious
F-150,
question.
we've put 70,000 miles in 18 months. So we will put some miles on the old Rescue.
But it's a Ford.
It is a Ford. It is a Ford.
What is it about Ford, man? What is it about Ford? When you were trying to honor firefighters in the most unique ways, in some of the most austere environments known to man,
yes.
you need a Ford. You need a Ford. And you're going to have two, man. You're going to have a Ford E1 rescue truck. And then you got the old Chariot, the old F-150, the old Buck 50. But I do have a serious question, though, for all the listeners out there. You mentioned a coffee pot. I got to know, are you serving Folgers or Maxwell House? Because it matters.
All right. It does matter. So everyone knows the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
That's right, man. Okay. You got to have Folgers.
And Folgers, actually, I've learned this in my whole deep dive here. They serve a very solid concentrate that you can put into a Bunn industrial coffee maker. And so I can get 600 cups of coffee for $130 out of this Folgers Bunn collaboration. And so we're going Folgers.
I like it because the best part of waking up is Folgers
in your cup.
But I also want to give you a shout out that the research you've done to know you can make 600 cups of coffee out of this concentrate.
We're going for it, 600. Man.
Tell me when you get to cup 600. I want to know.
The Orlando Fire Conference, I think, will hit it because you have 300 firefighters walking through the gate where I want to park this thing. And most of these guys will drink 2 or 3 cups throughout the day. So I think we'll hit it at the Orlando Fire Conference.
Nice. Well, I'm going to make a commitment to you. I don't know when and I don't know where, but I will take the stick figure purpose on the road because I want to get some feedback from those you're serving on Honor 1 and on this Folgers concentrate.
Yes.
So we'll make it happen.
Well, in 2026, the goal is to have it in the South Carolina Fire Show. So we'll
I know
see.
a guy. I know a guy.
We know some people.
Well, let me tell you, man. I am beyond excited now that you've said that. Like, what better place, man? There's
absolutely.
17,000 firefighters in the state.
Yep.
I can't wait to see that bad boy, but I'm more excited about it being on the streets, dude.
I'm fired up.
Seeing it on the streets. So, listen, Chance, I can't thank you enough for spending time with me today, talking about all the awesome things you and Honor Supply Co. have going on, and really to talk about the honor of serving others. And so, had one little thing I had saved for last to share with you that I came across yesterday. I'm a big quote guy. Like, I love reading, insights that other people have put, and I thought you'd like this one. So, the old Muhammad Ali. Who doesn't love Muhammad Ali, right? I found a great quote from Muhammad Ali that made me think about you. And it said, service to others is the rent we pay for the room here on earth. How powerful is that, dude?
That's
How powerful is that?
That's good.
So in that context, he's emphasizing the idea of serving others, and how true is that for us as firefighters and firefighter advocates like yourself, doing that and really highlighting the devotion and oath that those guys and all of us have made to serve in our community. So again, beyond grateful for you willing to come on the show and help me kick off the very first episode of the Stick Figure Purpose podcast. When I set out my vision for sharing stories and ideologies that are about serving others, honoring the work of firefighters, you are a natural pick for number 1. And you will always be numero uno.
I might make you a sticker. Sir.
I might make you a sticker for Honor 1 that says uno.
Numero uno.
I couldn't have asked for a better way to kick off 2025. So listen, guys, take a look at what Chance and Honor Supply Co. are doing. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram, Chance Craven or Honor Supply Co. And please visit his website, sign up for 1736 at www.honorsupplyco.com. If you enjoyed the episode today of the Stick Figure Purpose, please share with your family, friends, and anyone else. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Stick Figure Purpose. That's it for our first episode. Thank you to Chance Craven and Honor Supply Co. Until next time, see ya.
See ya.